Hey everyone, welcome to In the Clouds. I'm Sam,
I'm Hunter.
and yeah, this is In the Clouds, a DX podcast. There's a couple things that we're doing this episode. We're here to talk about DX in general, why we're doing this podcast, why it's important, and what we're building. Our company TinyCloud, which is about data sovereignty and interoperability with user data. Um, we really care about preserving the ability for humans to have agency in a world with superintelligence. And that's what this is about. So let's dive in. Uh, so Hunter, like, what is DIAC actually?
Yeah, so DAC is decentralized and democratic, differentially defensive acceleration. So the idea is we're accelerating, and as we're accelerating, we have to make high stakes decisions in a preferentially defensive way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think really DIAC is about, yeah, it's about accelerating technology. We're not saying we should go backwards. Technology is going to increase and get better. But there's a differential focus on our ability to defend rather than just create new forms of offense and powerful new capabilities. How can we also maintain our agency? Uh, so it's important to prioritize uh, like the way we build technology to kind of have these kind of three pillars of DI. So I'll touch on those. So it's to make sure technology is built in a decentralized way, in a democratic way, in a differentially defensive way. So to build technology just in a decentralized way, it just means that the technology we build should resist single points of control that could be that could lead to authoritarian rule, right? We don't want to use one single giant model that is like a choke point. We want to basically be able to like have things be decentralized. It should also be democratic, right? There should be broad, inclusive participation in how decisions are made, how this AI is adopted, how it's used, and it shouldn't just be controlled by a single, like a small elite, right? We otherwise there is this potential for tyranny, um, and then it should be differentially defensive. So we should build tools that protect human agency, rather than just like build just powerful new capabilities that totally nullify all human agency. Um, so if we do all these things, we could avoid falling into the terrible, terrible trap of irreversible human disempowerment. We don't want that. Um, so yeah. So basically, we're creating this podcast because we hold these values. We like these are things that we think about, and talk about for a lot, and we want to share like a lot of these ideas as well as because we're not just talking about this, we're also building a lot of this stuff with TinyCloud. Um, so yeah, I don't know, maybe like a quick intro to what TinyCloud is.
Yeah, so we're basically building a way for people to own and access their data with private keys, the same way they access their crypto,
Yeah.
with the goal being that people can share access to their data in a really granular way,
Mhm.
and also be empowered instead of targeted in kind of the incoming age of AI.
Yeah. 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 And I think that's, I mean, just kind of opening up a conversation. This is like, um, it's just something that I think we both really care about. And when we think about control over your data, today it looks like all your data lives on somebody else's servers, right?
Mm.
It's almost like you're like a little you're a serf in someone's kingdom, right? It's not your kingdom. You're just kind of you just happen to live here. Your data happens to live on their servers. They could delete it. They could look at it. They could do whatever they want. And you just happen to be allowed to be on these lands, on these data lands, right? And that's just the state of technology today, right? If I want to use like Notion, like it's not that the data is mine. It is my data actually, but I can't control who has access to it. If I live in a country like Russia and my country is sanctioned, all of a sudden I'm like a PhD student. Maybe I'm someone that just keeps all my data in one place. All of a sudden, boom, I've lost access, and this happened to like thousands of Notion users, right? So this is like an example of if you don't have access to your data, if you're actually just not in control in the current state. And this is what we're building TimeCloud for. We're building this so that you can control your data. You could choose where your data lives and permission who has access to it. So there's this kind of gives us two kind of core pillars of TinyCloud: sovereignty and interoperability. So yeah.
Yeah, so you covered some of the sovereignty piece, but really, I think the other really important piece is there's there's kind of this powerful unlock when you're able to use your data interoperably.
Yeah.
So for example, say I have, in the current state of affairs, we've got all these, basically when you use an app, your data lives with the app, right? And you might have your data spread between 100, 200 apps
Yeah.
and different services,
Yeah.
with little bits of your information where there's actually data that would be really valuable for all those apps to be able to share, but they
Yeah.
can't share it because of the current state of affairs.
Totally.
So the big benefit that like kind of the long tail for TinyCloud is if you have all that data in one place, then all these different apps that are built on TinyCloud and powered by TinyCloud can use that data interoperably.
Yeah.
And I think, so what that can kind of look like is you can have your location data, you can have your health wearable data, you could have data from like an AI pendant, which we'll maybe get into a little later in the episode here, all in one place and really interesting views on that data.
Yeah. One example, like let's say you have your location and your health data in one place. You could like maybe correlate like places where you're more stressed out, or places where if I'm in this particular location, maybe I sleep worse, right? But it look like,
or you could have your health data like synchronized with your calendar, like you have your meetings throughout the day.
Sure. Yeah.
So like you can actually see like in which meetings you experience the highest stress levels.
Yeah.
Like this is a special view on data, kind of a different type of a view on data that maybe right now people don't have a huge frame of reference for, because these things are so compartmentalized.
Yeah.
And there's not a way to do this in a way that gives users the ability to keep their information private.
Yeah. I think there's also the idea space of like combining different bits of data is like so constrained. So an example is like, let's say I want to share my location with my Instagram friends, right? Like
You can't do that on Instagram right now.
No, it's not a complex idea, right? It's like it's not like, why didn't everybody ever think of this? It's just that the design space that we live in for building applications is really constrained because you don't own the data. Everything is siloed. And in order to, let's say Instagram released that, you then have to trust Instagram with all your location data. Right?
But I don't personally really want to trust Instagram. I know it has my location data.
Yeah, it has some location data sometimes, but maybe like their business model is to grab my attention. Right. Their business model is, if I go to send you a message on Instagram, like we can talk about user interfaces and making sure they're actually custom to us, like in a bit. But I have to find some buttons in this corner and then ignore the giant distraction that's like, oh wow, this guy is like riding a mountain bike super fast downhill, like that. Like I'm actually curious. I want to watch that, right? I have to ignore that and keep in mind like the thing I'm trying to do. And this is like in the interest of Instagram, right? They want me to stay on. They want to show me ads, and this is like a totally reasonable business model. But it just isn't in my interest.
Yeah, they're optimizing for something different than maybe you want to optimize for as a user of technology.
Yeah, and I think especially when we have superintelligence, this is really like is amplified. When you have superintelligence, you have you can imagine this super persuasive AI, right? That's like really like super intelligently able to understand things that would convince you. And if it has all this other additional data about
it has all my data.
Yeah, if it knows maybe everything you said for the last year, then maybe it could probably really convince you like whatever. Like maybe you should purchase this thing because X and Y and Z, right? Or just to show you the right ad in just the right way that would get you. And this is a feature that some people are actually excited for when it comes to targeting customers at scale. Right?
Yeah, like the friend guy.
Yeah, sure.
Like their whole AI pendant model.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, before let's just talk about what an AI pendant is. Just so that people
like have
really
some
know.
frame of reference.
Yeah.
I guess a lot of people don't really know what these things are.
Yeah. So I actually have one here. This is Omi's this is the Omi pendant from Base Hardware. Hunter and I wore these in New York for a couple months last summer.
Took a bunch with us to Aleph. And Argentina, and then also generally been tinkering with them for a while.
Yeah.
We soldered a bunch of them ourselves.
Yeah.
They had the developer kits. So we put a bunch together.
Yeah. And so it's technology we're experimenting with. And the idea of the pendant is that it listens to everything you say and everything you hear, which has it's a whole Pandora's box of privacy issues, actually. And what we're focused on at TinyCloud is the sovereignty bit of the privacy issue of the pendant. So when I'm wearing this and I'm capturing everything I said for last year, it's super useful, right? Like maybe, I don't know, if I'm learning another language, like I was in Argentina, I was speaking Spanish and I was making mistakes. And it would have been nice to be able to use an app that's like, hey, by the way, when you ordered that steak, you should have ordered it like this,
Yeah, here's
right?
your custom like language lesson for the day.
Yeah, that's
In
based on
15 minutes at the end of the day.
that's based on what you're saying and the situations you're in,
Right.
right? And so, or like maybe I don't know if you're like in therapy and like maybe there's a trigger that happens. You're now aware of the you can now use AI to say, hey, before so X and Y and Z happened before this event happened, before you got in this argument with your partner or ABC, right? And they can summarize that, send it to your therapist before you meet with them.
Or if we want to get like really out there, you
Sure.
know, it's like maybe I want a view of my data where I have open source glucose monitor
Sure.
that's correlating my blood sugar levels with my vocal intonation from an AI pendant.
Sure.
I mean, really, there's just like a broad array of ways that what you're capturing
Yes.
can be applied.
Yes. And
It's really useful.
it's incredibly useful. And the thing is, there are a couple things. One is like we all are so different, and the needs that like I have are different from your needs, right? And right now, this looks like different products. But in the future, we can really have products that are built exactly for us, like by super intelligent AIs, right? It's that like products that like I need my user interface to look like this because this is how I think. Like on my to-do list, I need important to-dos to be bigger and things that are not important to be smaller, right? But right now, no to-do app supports this, right?
Right.
But maybe that's really good for me. If I do that, I'm 10x more productive. But my user interfaces don't adapt, right? So the ability for AI to build stuff specifically for me
With all of your context.
with all my context, all my data, this is like coming online. There are tools like Replit agents,
Bolt.new,
yeah,
Cursor,
yeah, Lovable,
GitHub Copilot.
yeah, like all these
Like a giant list,
yeah,
right?
yeah. All these tools are coming online
Yeah.
that are making like software like the cost of software development is basically going to zero.
Right. The software mode is going to disappear
Basically.
at some point.
And so ultimately what matters is data. And I think it really is going to matter where your data lives and having access to it.
Yeah.
And that's really why we're building a TinyCloud, because you should be able to have an alternative to a centralized system, especially with something like a pendant, because the pendant, like this is like kind of like our shared hypothesis,
Right.
There's going to be an adoption of pendants in the future, right? Because the benefit of having a digital memory that's like kind of this perfect digital memory, the benefit of having that is greater than the cost.
Yeah.
Is greater than the cost, and there are costs.
There will be people going to market with these, some version of these.
Yeah.
It's like they'll give them to you basically.
Yeah,
They'll be
sure.
like, here, you can have like, do you want this like a AI capability?
Yeah.
And you're not paying with your money, you're paying with your data.
Yeah.
People don't understand this paradigm right now. Like
Yeah.
the valuable part, like the long tail benefits of AI come with having your personal data set.
Yeah.
Like starting like really like now.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
The more data, the more context you can provide to maybe down the line AGI or maybe at some point superintelligence.
Yeah.
That has huge benefits.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
You have all your data in this sovereign place. Every time AI improves, what you can do with your data transforms.
Yeah.
But possessing data yourself is kind of
it's important. This reminds me of it's slightly off topic, but it reminds me of one of my friends that she wrote this memoir. She's been writing memoirs about just kind of the phase of her life, all the lessons she's learned, and she's been writing it just like for herself. And I was chatting with her. I'm like, this is incredible content to put in the context of AI when you ask a question, right? Like she's really distilled her life into this essence of this book, and then now she can just say like I have this decision to make. Let me think, what are the pros and cons for me? And then like here's my memoir. Right. And I think this is kind of like a similar shape of product, right? Like, but kind of like passively. Like you don't have to really like think like, oh my God, I got to write that down. You could just have a conversation, be super present, and like someone could give you recommendations for this place you're going to travel to. And you're like, this is awesome. Thank you so much. And your AI companion was listening.
Or just like being able to explore how you develop as a person, like kind of independently.
Sure.
Like, you know, being able to kind of see the web of life events.
Yes.
And like there's a lot of richness there.
Yeah. And
Um,
the thing is that to me is really important to this design space is a sense of privacy
mm,
in the sense of like
control.
yes, control, sovereignty. You're like, but you want me to put all my life where? You want me to
Right.
record everything, all my details, everything about me,
Right.
and like give it to someone who's going to just package it and sell it to the next person? Maybe not even sell it. Maybe it's used to control me.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
Like the
like
future is
control your
so
attention.
control
Right.
your attention. Like the future is so unknown. Like
Mm,
it's really important that um and it's really the kind of the core piece of DIAC, right?
hmm
Is that we want to have agency as we
Right.
move into the future.
Yeah, we're going to build this stuff in a defensive way.
Yeah.
I mean, in our last episode, we discussed a little bit how devices like these are sort of like we almost view them as being uh, somewhat analogous to future like brain-computer interfaces,
Yeah.
right? Like
Totally.
this right now is these devices, which there's like many of them, which will go to market later this year, and some that already have.
Mhm.
Uh, they sort of represent an extension of yourself. I mean, this type of data that we're beginning to crystallize,
Yeah. So it's a whole new
it feels
category.
qualitatively a little different than like when I'm typing out a text message.
Yeah.
I know that someone else is receiving it, or writing
Yeah.
an email, right?
Sure.
Like I'm cognizant of the information
Yeah.
because I'm writing it out.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
I'm giving it, I'm crystallizing it by the very act. Versus like in a conversation, especially in a society maybe where there's a lot of these on.
Yeah.
It's a different paradigm.
It is. It is. Like if I like if these are more normalized and like I'm telling you something that's private and I trust you, like if it's sovereign, I can just tell you and I know like, oh, Hunter has this data, like I trust Hunter.
Yeah, I
Like,
told Hunter, and that Hunter was the person I told about.
yeah,
Or,
yeah,
right.
yeah, and it's fine if he wants to recall with AI, of course. This is different if the pendant is also a networked device because it's not just a conversation between me and you, Hunter.
Right.
It's a conversation between me, you, and this third party that's listening, right? And the third party listening could be who knows who it could be. It could be a corporation with their corporate interests. It could be a government with their governmental interest, right? It could be like maybe you're not in the West. Maybe you live in a country like China, where it's like a lot more centralized, right? Or maybe it's a world with superintelligence, where this is super intelligent agent, entity, whatever, that has its agenda that's like doing, right? And to me, this is why it's really important. Like if we're all wearing devices and this kind of super intelligence present, we should be able to like have be able to grant permission.
Yeah.
And say, all right, I'm going to give permission to this entity to access.
Like on a case by case basis.
Yeah, I'm just like, you know what? All right, cutting off permission, because this is what we have like as people, right? We have the ability to
say yes or no.
To say yes or no. Yeah. And I think we don't have this when it comes to tech. And I think this is really the core of TinyCloud.
Yeah, we've sort of just like it's like this slow slide, right? Like it's been this here's a few new capabilities, right? Here's a few new capabilities, and we're going to ask for a little more of your information that you typically consider to be private. We're going to ask for access to some data set.
Yep.
And if you don't allow us access to X data set, you won't get these capabilities.
Yeah.
But that's kind of shifting, like as kind of the landscape of software development sort of transforms.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we think ultimately that all the tools are here where they haven't been before. Before, something like TinyCloud would have been a huge task. You mean like people are gonna build personal apps? Like everyone's so what? You're gonna rebuild the app store from scratch? Like this is crazy.
But it's
right?
different with things like Bolt.new.
It is different.
Or GitHub Copilot or Cursor or Replit. Like
it is different. And I think there's also also integrating with things, right? For example, in our earlier gave example kind of collecting your location data. You could store all your location data in your TinyCloud, right? This is maybe I trust it, so it's like, yep, cool. I trust my stuff. It's like on my machines,
right? You're doing it locally.
You know, yeah. Like, okay, it's my location data, and now I want to correlate it with maybe all of my messages in like WhatsApp or Telegram, right? I want to say, hey, I know I met this person when I was I don't know, let's say in Thailand, right? I know I'm at this person in this conference in Thailand, and I'm trying to find the message. I can't find it. I could just go to a map view, zoom into Thailand,
If
and
you can remember where you met them, then you
yes,
could like, hey,
yes,
here's my conversations organized by the location they started in.
yes. And this is possible because if you save your location, you save the location and the timestamp.
Right.
You also have the message, the first time you sent the message, the timestamp of that, and you can say, okay, uh, when I was in this location at this timestamp, are there any messages that are nearby? Right. So you can then build this, you can reconstruct that. And this is possible because you have all the data, right?
Right.
You can, an AI can do this, no problem,
problem.
right? Like basically every software engineer can kind of do that mapping. AI can do that mapping. The world of possibilities is like blown open. And this is one of the reasons that we think this is such a fundamental, like it's a fundamental base technology.
We can have like the kind of the downstream versions of things like bolt.new
Sure.
that spin up apps or new user interfaces for people like that with a sovereign backend or accessing the sovereign backend that is your TinyCloud.
Yeah, exactly. So this is something that we're really thinking about. We're thinking about what, like, if you have your TinyCloud, like building apps on top of your TinyCloud, sharing apps, publishing them for other people, having like a little TinyCloud app store, right? Where it's like, okay, cool, I can build an app that looks at my data, or I can have an AI look at the data I have in my TinyCloud, build an app specifically for me, and then I can share that app with my friends or with whoever else. Like you can monetize the apps you make, right? Like you don't even have to be an app developer, right?
Yeah.
Because
you really can just
but someone can also just really think about that app and then just recreate it themselves as well. Like really, the moats are drying up, but opportunities are also like exploding. You know,
right. I mean, especially when you think about this whole new category of AI pendant data. Like if I've got my conversations, like there's tons of different views I want to have on my conversations.
Yeah.
I want to be able to go to the end of the day and look at the therapist view. I want to be able to go at the end of the day and look at like maybe the analytical notes view.
Yeah.
Maybe I want to look at like a high level overview of all the meetings I had throughout the day and what some of the important takeaways were in under 100 words per meeting. You know.
Yeah.
And this is all possible with AI.
So I want to make kind of one last point, kind of before we wrap up. I want to harken back to why we brought up AI pendants initially, why we went to discuss them, because when there's a pendant, it's called friend. It's basically kind of like your AI friend. But the idea is there's an interview with the author or with the founder,
the creator,
with Avi Schiffman. Where he's kind of like pontificating on ways they can make money, and he's just like, maybe we can make money by like having the AI that you talk to using, because it's super persuasive, selling you products, right? And it's kind of like this is kind of the path we've gone down in like the 2010s, right? There's this Chris Dixon writes about this in Read Write Own, the attract extract cycle, right? Where people building companies will do all this stuff to attract people, right? And then once they have the network, once it's there, then they extract value.
Right.
And that could be on a whole new scale with AI.
Right.
And so really, it's kind of why really a shift in how technology works, how we relate to our data, and inverting control so that instead of me signing into the app and signing into a company, a corporation's data, like data set and data servers, they're signing into mine. They're saying, hey, Sam, can I have access to your notes? Can I have access to your to-dos? Like, and then it's like, yeah, I give you access. You can write here. Like maybe I go and I get, I don't know, maybe I get like an x-ray, and like, yeah, you could write x-rays, sure. And I'm going to give my doctor permission to read them. Right. And like this granting of permissions, really puts you in the driver's seat. And this is how we preserve agency as we move into the future with superintelligence. If you can preserve your agency when it comes to corporations and governments, you can also preserve it with superintelligence. And this is an important capability if we want agency in the future.
Yeah, like this idea about having an AI pendant that's used to market to me, like this is
it's like throws away.
This is like something I really don't want, right? Like we already deal with this with Instagram, with TikTok, with really any scrolling platform, right? any one of these scrolling platforms is really it's got the crosshairs like on your attention. It's like, how long can I keep this person on this platform?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this is how they make money.
And yeah, I think there's kind of two distinct paths here, right?
Yeah.
There's one that directs us more towards personal empowerment, and the other one that leads more towards attention manipulation.
Yeah.
And I think it is really different to think about AGI or superintelligence being able to control what I'm seeing versus like a product manager.
Sure.
Like, it's already bad enough that a product manager has a pretty good idea about how to target my attention.
Yeah.
And it's already difficult as AI tools come online to help those people.
Sure.
But AGI or superintelligence having that capability with my personal data isn't really something I want.
Yeah. Well, it's more, I think it's also more that you want to be able to control it.
Yeah.
If I really could work and use like a super intelligent system to direct my attention, I would direct it to very different things than maybe the product manager at Instagram, right, or Facebook, you know? Like, there are things that I am trying to put my attention on that I think are beneficial to my well-being, right? That it's really hard to like, it's just hard to do that in the current paradigm.
Yeah, actually, I think I want to harken back to something that you said to me a long time ago in one of our early conversations.
Yeah.
Which was, cryptography is the shield to the sword that is AI.
Yeah.
And when I first heard you say this, I thought, oh yeah, like that makes sense. Like, you know, AI is the sword and cryptography is the shield. I want the shield. And the more time has worn on, the more I realized, like, actually the idea of that statement is you want both. You want both the cryptographic protection and the AI enablement, right?
Yeah, well,
and that's like kind of the big vision, I think, for TinyCloud and you know, sovereign personal data stores that allow you to use your data interoperably.
Yeah.
Like, you get both.
Yes.
Right? You get the control, you get the ability to make the choices, you get the long tail of benefits from having all your data in one place that you control access to. Each time AI gets a little more powerful, guess what? You got all your data right here, ready to use that context with whatever tool you want to use it with.
Yeah.
Which I think is really, that's the big benefit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you said that so succinctly. I don't know if I have more to say.
I mean, you said it.
But fair.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, fair.
I just remembered it.
Yeah. Fair. Well, yeah, I think with that, like, that kind of like touches on what TinyCloud is, like, conceptually. And there's a lot of technology we're building to make this happen. And so if you're interested, definitely go to tinycloud.xyz. And learn more. Reach out to us on.
You know, we didn't really get into was our tool Muse.
Oh yeah,
we've actually got like a tool that people can use now that kind of functions a little bit like an AI pendant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe just worth throwing in there. It's
kind of... I think Muse is so TinyCloud. We're building a protocol, and we're also building products on top of the protocol. Muse is one of the products. I think for it's best to focus on, at least for now, I kind of want to focus on protocol. Muse is like, go to check out Muse. Muse is a way for people to it's like a software pendant, I would say. But because it's software, you can do tons of things. Like, you can capture conversations that are happening in person, take notes. You'll be able to like view those notes in like different ways, right? Like, okay, I'm meeting someone at a conference, I record a conversation because it's really interesting. I could send it off to them, send them a summary, but then maybe I'm also capturing the conversation with that person and then adding that to my personal knowledge base, right? This Muse is kind of like the entry point here. But yeah, like, there's so many applications with this that we're building our own. And that's Muse kind of represents that. But this is not a TinyCloud podcast. This is a DIAC podcast. So we just want to talk about TinyCloud today, just because it is it's so aligned. It's so aligned. We want to kind of...
Yeah, it's really motivated by DIAC.
Yeah, and we're not maybe able to talk about it just with context later in the future. But yeah, we just moving forward, we're really going to be like basically doing deep dives on like papers and blogs that are like really touch on
DIAC principles, ideas, are adjacent to, or
and then like just like how do we again preserve human agency in a world with superintelligence. I think if you haven't, it's really worth thinking about what superintelligence is. It's like
Mm.
worth like kind of a meditation on what is superintelligence. Um, because it is like, how do we preserve our ability to operate freely and to plan, I want to do this with my life, like to be able to do that still.
And if we look at people who are experts in this domain, really, Vitalik, right?
Sure, yeah, even like
Time,
Dario,
or Dario Amodei,
sure.
like timeline looks like probably,
Oh, sure.
maybe 3 years to AGI, maybe another 3 years to superintelligence.
Yeah,
This is kind of a speedy estimate, but
yeah,
I think it's happening a lot quicker than people expect it to.
yeah,
And if it does happen that quickly, it's important to be ahead of it.
yeah. It's quicker than I expected.
Yeah,
that's for sure. But yeah, with that, anything else?
your data is important.
It is,
right? It's actually important. It's maybe not the craziest idea in the world to think that the data that you're generating is maybe an asset that you should have ownership of and you should have control of.
Yeah.
Even though I almost feel like we've been gaslit into believing you should there's no privacy. Your privacy is not important.
Dead,
Obviously, my privacy is important. Yeah. It's going to actually be a lot more important.
Yeah,
I really feel like this is just sort of the big missing piece, right?
Yeah.
I talk to so many people who are like, no one cares about privacy, and it's not true. People
really care. You wear one of these, you'll find
around, you'll find out real fast. People are like, what is that recording me?
So this is, and it's something we didn't really touch on.
Yeah.
Is the implications of such a device in society,
right?
And I mean, it's hard because I would really say, like, think about the implications of someone having a brain-computer interface,
right,
and not knowing that they have the ability to remember everything digitally perfectly.
Right.
People already have, like, there's a guy with the brain-computer interface today. Right. Like, it's just not, the software isn't there to be able to like accurately like record what he's seeing.
As a general statement, a lot of this stuff is a lot closer than people believe it is.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
And I think that is sort of why it's almost like we have to draw a line in the sand.
Yes.
Like if we can't have sovereignty with these devices, then this is a huge problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? This is barely we made a little bit of an argument about cell phones and these devices, but this really does, I think, represent an extension of myself.
Yeah.
I think these devices represent a really intimate type of data that people are going to begin generating.
Yeah.
And we have to establish paradigms around what's acceptable with that data.
Totally.
And frankly, right now, I think there's not a sufficient system.
Yeah. I personally also am not waiting for anyone to like kind of legislate some solutions, right? I'm not waiting for anyone to legislate some solutions.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's important that we actually build the changes that we want to see.
Totally.
That's why we're building TinyCloud.
Yes.
So yeah, with that, I guess we're gonna wrap it up today. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. If you like this, please subscribe on whatever medium, whether it's like Spotify or YouTube or
Apple Podcasts.
Yeah. But thanks. And look forward to the next one.
See you then.